Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and I am continuing with my fan-favorite series on the channel, Ultimate Spider-Man. This is part 2 of, what is it that I'm at right now? Ultimate Spider-Man Ultimate Collection Volume 6, I think is what this is. So check out last episode if you haven't already, Ultimate Spider-Man vs. Carnage. And obviously I split these two parts up because last episode, Gwen Stacy died. This episode, Peter is hanging out with Human Torch. It's so diametrically opposed with what happens. It's like it's a breather arc, I think is what you would probably call it. Okay, something terrible just happened. Let's give the readers a couple of months of nice, calm issues. Well, not exactly that calm issues, because I fucking hate these first couple issues. Just like it seems like Brian Michael Bendis did, because he sure shit talks the fact that he had to write them and that it was actually an editor's idea. So, unfortunately, let's get right into it. But before I do, make sure to like and subscribe for more comic videos just like this. Really helps me out. Leave a like for having to deal with goddamn Ultimate Wolverine, because it just takes such a toll on myself every time I have to talk about the Ultimate X-Men. Released in 2004, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mark Bagley. This is Ultimate Spider-Man versus the Ultimate Marvel Universe. And this book begins, I don't know, maybe 2 months after the previous Carnage story arc. It doesn't say. The Ultimate Spider-Man timeline is such a piece of shit. It makes no sense at all. And you'll learn eventually, seemingly this all takes place over the course of a year, which already doesn't make sense based on the Hollywood story arc. So I'm sort of headcanoning how I think this makes sense. The whole thing with Ultimate Marvel really should have been, this universe takes place in real time. I don't know why they did that. They did every other thing they could possibly think of to differentiate themselves from the normal Marvel universe, except not have the Marvel's sliding time scale. For some reason, they kept that part. Tirade over.
Peter, Mary's here. You're going to be late, so wake up.
What the hell is going on?
I know. We're not moving yet, but I wanted to get a head start.
Huh? Oh no.
Peter Parker. The whole point of having a boyfriend, Tiger, is having someone to walk to school with. Let us go.
School?
Not exactly my definition of a hot date, but it's the best we can do.
What's that smell? What is going on? Where am I? I'm hairy? How am I hairy? What's wrong with my voice? What happened to me? What the fuck? Wolverine and Peter Parker have swapped bodies because someone thought that would be a good idea. Back at the Parker residence, Aunt May calls Peter to answer the phone from a call from the Daily Bugle. Peter answers, and on the line is a gruff, hairy man calling from a payphone. Peter demands to know what Wolverine did to him and why he's in his body. Wolverine says he has no idea, and Peter orders Wolverine to go to school for him because he's already cut 10 days this semester and can't cut another one. Then he makes like a weirdly anti-mutant spiel and tells Wolverine to get out of his house, and also where they'll meet. Then Peter accidentally cuts off his pinky and the payphone, but watches as it grows back in amazement. Later that day, Wolverine in Peter Parker's body ogles some cheerleaders when MJ notices him. She asks what's wrong and if something happened last night, and Peter grabs her shoulder and says, "Babe, listen, talk time's over, so why don't you go play with your Barbie or whatever it is you do around here? I got stuff to take care of." MJ angrily shoves his extra backpack with his costume into his hands and storms off. Later, Wolverine and Peter Parker's body, having done God knows what in the time that's passed, wanders around the school campus trying to figure out his way around, looking for the place that real Peter told him to meet. Then the on-campus cop spots him and he runs away. Wolverine climbs up a wall, but loses his grip and lands on the cop. And then he's just about to slam the guy's head into the pavement before Wolverine, I guess, arrives and stops him. Real Peter demands to know what kind of mutant shit Wolverine pulled, and Wolverine tells him maybe it was all Peter's fault. Then they get into an argument, and Peter tells Wolverine to get to his classes because if he's not on the attendance, he's expelled. Peter accidentally lets loose a claw and shoves it back into his body as Wolverine tells him that he's a bit high-strung for a teenager. 45 minutes later, Wolverine sits in English class as Peter waits around outside and witnesses a police chase in progress. He snicks his claws and leaps into action, accidentally overshooting his landing, which causes both vehicles to crash, and the criminal's van lands right atop of him. Class takes note of the action, and they recognize the man outside as none other than Wolverine of the X-Men. Peter puts his hands up as the cops surround him and accidentally snicks his claws and immediately panics and tries to tell them he doesn't know how to get rid of them. Meanwhile, Wolverine sneaks out of the class and outside where he watches Peter get tased and sent into the back of a cruiser. Wolverine runs out and tells Peter to get out of there as the cops hold him back. Peter shouts to put on the costume and never go out in public without it, also that he hates Wolverine, and Wolverine returns the statement. Later in the clink, Peter receives his free phone call. 40 miles away in Westchester, New York, Kitty Pryde answers the phone. Peter explains to her the situation, and then Kitty just starts cracking up as she hands the phone over to Storm, but Peter accidentally snicks the phone in two and is once again tased. Meanwhile, Wolverine takes one look at the costume and decides that he's not wearing that stupid thing. But he's gonna respect Peter's privacy and his wishes to not reveal his identity, and just wears the mask. And web slingers, obviously. Then he figures out how to climb through the city, very haphazardly. Later in the jail, a guy in a Spider-Man mask breaks in and clobbers the police and frees Wolverine, aka Peter. The duo escape and get into an argument until Wolverine asks what the last thing Peter remembers doing in his own body was.
Dude, listen to me. Last night I did my homework, talked to my girlfriend on the phone, and fell asleep in my clothes reading The Hobbit.
You weren't bouncing around as Spider-Man fighting one of those idiots in a costume?
No, this isn't my fault. I'm not the mysterious mutant with the mystery past who lives in a mysterious school with a bunch of mysterious mutant misfits with the mysterious freaky powers who fight giant mysterious robots. Of course this is your fault! You know this is your fault!
But before they can continue this riveting conversation, an explosion followed by screaming echoes through the neighborhood. The two find none other than the Shocker, and he's quickly dealt with when the X-Men show up.
I told you to stop hitting on me, Logan.
He hit on you again, Jean?
Wait, what?
Logan, I told you. Wait, Logan? I told you that if you hit on me one more time, I was going to do something mean with my incredibly powerful psychic powers. I put your brain in the place it least wanted to be. And your brain picked—
Put it
Lady,
back.
you've ruined my life.
Oh, calm down.
Ah, what did you do to my shoulder?
Yeah, I accidentally hurt you.
God, I hate you people! You know why? It's not because you're mutants, it's because you're all a bunch of— That's why you— Gah!
You were a real jerk today.
I'm sorry. If I could find the English words to describe how crazy of a day this was, I would. You know me. That wasn't me. I wasn't myself. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But can I ask you something?
Sure.
That thing you tried to do this morning, can we not do that till we're older?
I hate it. But thankfully, this next storyline is pretty fun, and kind of foreshadows and establishes some future storylines. Sometime later at the Baxter Building, Sue and Reed confront Johnny and Ben Grimm, aka The Thing. Mostly Johnny. Sue and her dad have been talking, and they think that Johnny needs to do something more with his time than playing video games and hanging around the Baxter Building. Johnny says he doesn't want to because he's a freaking superhero, but Sue isn't having it, and she doesn't want her little brother to become a NEET. Sue suggests that she and Reed do some homeschooling, which Reed is not happy about. But then Ben Grimm suggests a far more enticing idea to Johnny. If he goes to high school, He'll be around cute girls his age all day. That's actually the same advice that my grandfather gave me before I went into high school. He said that if it was anything like his high school experience, my pants would be too tight to properly walk around. Johnny comes to the realization that Ben Grimm is correct and agrees to go to school. Sometime later, as the school year approaches its end, I suppose, it must, based on how everyone is dressed, summer, springish, I guess, and the fact that they go to the beach in this book later. Like I said, the Ultimate Spider-Man timeline just makes no sense, so I'm just trying to make it manageable. So this must be near the end of the school year. At Midtown High, MJ and Flash get into an argument again, and everyone go their separate ways to lunch. Except for Liz Allen. She's noticed the new kid in school. She runs up to MJ and tells her that she needs her, and tells Peter to stand over her way to the side. So Peter just walks away and watches as Liz whispers to MJ, and the two keep glancing over at the cute blonde boy. And Peter's like, gee, I wonder what they're talking about. MJ scoffs, and the two walk away as Liz tells her,
Mary Jane Watson Parker, please don't make me beg.
Don't call me that.
Come on. It does have a nice ring to it. Mary Jane Watson Parker.
This isn't making me want to help you.
Later at lunch, Liz and MJ sit with Peter as they continue to discuss the new boy, as Johnny receives a call from Reed after he uses his powers to heat up his lunch. Reed immediately tells Johnny not to use his powers in front of the other kids, and explains to him that Johnny's wristwatch is actually a monitor, and then hangs up. Then a cute redhead walks over, right up to Johnny, and he introduces himself and starts putting on that trademark Human Torch flame charm. MJ says that she already has a boyfriend, but she does have a friend that likes him. MJ then explains that Liz wants to know if Johnny's seeing anybody, blah blah blah. Johnny asks if Liz is nice. MJ tells him all about her. MJ tells him that their group meets up in the parking lot after school, and usually they end up going to the mall. So later in the parking lot after school, Peter and MJ watch as Liz and Johnny talk. MJ says that she's been extra cute lately because she hopes it'll snap Peter out of the slump that he's in. Then she gives him a kiss and says that she has a great idea. A fancy date night. She wants to dress up in fancy clothes and go to someplace nice and have like a really fancy dinner like there are a couple of adults. And, you know, after everything they've been through, she thinks that they definitely deserve it. And then she says that she kind of likes Peter not being Spider-Man anymore. And she loses Peter's attention because he walks away solemnly. But then Liz walks over and tells them that she's going on a date with Johnny to the beach this Friday and invites them along because her mom would never let her go alone with him. Peter's not sure if he wants to go, so MJ has to say one single word to convince him.
Bikini.
Cut to Friday afternoon. The gang watches as Johnny swims in the ocean. Kong wonders why Johnny, who is a senior, is hanging out with them, sophomores. MJ says it's because he's new and doesn't really know anybody, and then Liz fawns over how Johnny has 0% body fat, and then he heads back to shore and lies down with him. Liz asks Johnny where he's from, and he immediately brushes it off by asking where they're going for food. Later that night, the Midtown gang, Johnny and a couple of other kids, all hang out by a bonfire at the beach. And somehow the topic of Spider-Man finding the Green Goblin at school came up, and Johnny asks if Liz really saw Spider-Man because he loves Spider-Man. He thinks he's the coolest. And then he starts going on about how awesome Spider-Man is as MJ just kind of smirks over to Peter. Someone says that Spider-Man's creepy because he wears a mask and is probably a mutant, causing Johnny to stand up and say,
Who else do you know that just goes out there and helps people with no agenda? Guy doesn't even care what people say about him. He helps people. And all the bull he gets online with that stupid movie, and he still does it? Oh, crap. I can explain this? I can explain.
MJ hides behind Peter as they both stare up at him. Johnny turns to Peter and MJ and asks them to tell Liz that he didn't mean to scare her like this and flies away. Later that night at the Baxter Building, Sue finds her brother in the lounge watching TV. Sue asks what happened. Johnny tells her that he accidentally used his powers and asks her to leave him alone. He says that he's not going back to school. The following Monday, Peter and MJ leave school and find Johnny sitting outside against a red convertible. Johnny asks if Liz is around, but MJ tells him that she left after lunch because people kept making fun of her for what happened on Friday. Then they ask who and what Johnny is. Johnny says that he's not allowed to say. But he is not a mutant, and he's also not a bad guy. MJ says that Liz has issues, a lot of phobias. And MJ also reveals that Liz thinks that she's a mutant and that she is the one that lit Johnny on fire. Johnny says that he's not coming back to school again and asks him to tell Liz that he's sorry and that he really does like her and he didn't want any of this to happen. And then he tells them about a place that he'd like to meet her and to let her know if she wants, and then he drives away. The duo walk off as MJ says that there's no way Liz actually goes and meets him, but there is someone else who could go and meet Johnny. Later that afternoon, Johnny wanders around the park waiting for Liz when Spider-Man appears. Spidey asks a very starstruck Johnny Storm if everything's okay, and he explains that he was swinging by and noticed Johnny looking all glum. Johnny explains the situation and just starts fanboying out and introduces himself as Johnny Storm and how great he thinks Spider-Man is. And he tells Spider-Man about Liz being the first girl he's actually met since it happened. And Spidey asks what exactly he means, and Johnny shows him. Spidey asks how he got his powers, and Johnny tells him he's not actually allowed to use them, primarily because of Spider-Man and how the general public has reacted and treats him. But he does reveal that they are putting together a way to make their presence a little more palpable to the public. Meaning that this takes place between Ultimate Fantastic Four Volumes 2 and 3, because in Ultimate Fantastic Four Volume 3, that deals with the FF fighting Annihilus, and they accidentally out themselves to the public when Annihilus invades this reality and attacks Las Vegas. And they make a big deal at the end about how pissed off the government is, and, you know, the Baxter Building heads and whatever are about the Fantastic Four being so publicly, seen after that event happens. So this is sometime between those two volumes in terms of timeline. I am working on a YouTube playlist of the Ultimate Marvel Comics universe in chronological order as close as I can get it. So check that out if you want to watch all the videos I've done so far in chronological order. Anyway, they keep talking for a bit when the tried and true tradition of sending some superheroes off on an adventure occurs. An explosion. Spidey thwips away and Human Torch flames on. At the scene, a building is on fire. Spidey rescues a young woman who is near a window, and she explains that she was babysitting, meaning that the baby is still inside. Spidey tries to get in, but a gust of flame thrashes against him. Human Torch then begins absorbing the fire into his body, allowing Spidey to leap inside and rescue the child. Human Torch continues absorbing all the fire until he's glowing white hot, and then he unleashes it all upward into the sky and flies away. Back at the park, the duo meet up. Johnny excitedly paces around, talking about how awesome that was and how amazing it is to just save people. Then a convoy of cops roll up, and Spidey tells him they gotta go. Later, Johnny admonishes the police for coming after them, as Spidey explains that's what happens when they see a guy on fire who can fly and someone wearing a costume. Spidey suggests that half of the world just want to constantly be scared of whatever they experience, whatever they find, and that those scared people just seem far louder than the happy ones. Johnny thanks Spider-Man and asks that when they go public, he'll make sure to swing on by. Spidey asks how he'll know when they've gone public, and Johnny just laughs and flames on and flies away. And then sometime later, fairly soon after that storyline, probably a week or so later maybe, at a fancy restaurant called the Tavern on the Green, Peter Parker arrives in a fancy suit to find MJ in a fancy little black dress. Peter remarks that she looks like a 25-year-old supermodel. And then they're seated and they realize just how expensive the menu is. MJ says that she'll be having the soup, and Peter suggests that they get a lot of bread. MJ then asks him about what happened. He was going to tell her something that happened with a magician or something. Peter is apprehensive because they're in the middle of a restaurant, and he doesn't even remember mentioning it to her. But he tells her that the other day in class, his mind started to wander, and he looked out and saw Gwen's empty desk. So he left school early, put on the costume, and took to the city until he came across the Ultimates fighting a half-zombie, half-robot named Deathlock. He helped the superhero team take down the villain, and later at the Daily Bugle, Peter worked on the website when Jameson angrily called him into the office. JJ explained to Peter that he's finally letting him go on a story with an actual reporter, like JJ did when he was a kid at the Bugle. So he sent Peter out with Ben Urich to interview the new L. Ron Hubbard, Sorcerer to the Stars, Dr. Stephen Strange. In the present of the restaurant, Peter tells MJ that he felt like he's met Doctor Strange before, but he has no memory of it. Then we get a television special all about Dr. Stephen Strange Sr. by reporter Patsy Walker. It details who Strange was, the dramatic reenactment of his car crash, which killed his then pregnant wife, his journey across the world, and eventual falling in with occult teachings in the Himalayan mountains. Then they interview Clea Strange, Stephen Strange Sr.'s second wife, and bearer of his child, Stephen Strange Jr. Patsy Walker discusses all the theories surrounding Strange Sr.'s disappearance, and then discusses his son, Stephen Strange Jr., and his rise to fame as the sorcerer to the stars. Later in the evening, Ben and Peter arrive at Strange's sanctum, where they meet Wong, the manservant of the home. Ben tells him that they have an appointment to speak to Dr. Strange, but Wong says that the doctor's unavailable right now and shuts the door on him as Peter's spider senses tingle. Ben begrudgingly hails a cab. Peter tells him that he has to get home since he lives all the way in Queens. Back in the present, Peter explains that he felt something was going on inside Strange's mansion, as MJ makes some strange small talk. Peter continues his story. He smashed his way into the sanctum, made a Talking Heads reference, and discovered Wong standing over Strange, holding a mysterious amulet. Peter continues to tell MJ the story when he notices that her skin is changing into a sickly, pale gray. And then he's grabbed from behind by Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy, and suddenly a menagerie of terrible visions appear behind the vampiric Mary Jane. And I love this depiction of this weird, it's almost like What If Ultimate Universe version, this one panel depicting this nightmare of an event. It's the Doctor Strange villain nightmare, if you haven't figured it out already. But I love the Kingpin with the symbiote, fucking Doc Ock making out with Black Cat for some reason, Green Goblin marrying Aunt May, which works far better than if it was Doc Ock, recreating the famous Doc Ock marrying Aunt May from the main story. I like that one. And then I don't know what the floating heads are in the back. People taunting him, I guess? I don't know. Back in the real world, Doctor Strange has awoken to find his sanctum window broken, Wong unconscious and webbed up, and a sleeping Spider-Man splayed across his parlor room floor. He frees Wong from the webbing with a magical spell that accidentally gets rid of his shirt too, revealing that Ultimate Wong has at least one pierced nipple. Wong goes to Spider-Man and takes off his mask, and Strange asks if he could possibly remember being here before. It's another Ultimate Marvel team-up. That was also how Doctor Strange was introduced to the Ultimate Marvel Universe, a character that I don't think ever gets used after this story, maybe a couple times, until he's finally brutally murdered in Ultimatum. Wong asks Steven what he remembers last. Steven says that he was meditating, and Wong asks if he actually cast a astral defense spell before meditation. Strange says he did not, meaning that he accidentally left the astral plane open, allowing possession to take place. And then Steven leaves to collect his father's magical books. Meanwhile, in the nightmare world, Peter is chased through an empty New York City by a deluge of nightmarish heroes and villains alike. He lands at a picnic in Central Park, the one with his parents, his aunt and uncle, and the Brock family. He looks over and sees Uncle Ben's decaying corpse with smoking bullet holes, and then everyone is dead, except for Eddie Brock, who taunts Peter for being an orphan and threatens that he'll come back and kill him. Peter runs against a precipice overlooking a large lake and stops as Gwen's body floats towards the shore. And from behind him, Harry Osborn tells Peter that Gwen is dead and kicks Peter into the water. Back in reality, Strange and Wong study magical tomes until Wong discovers an entry on a dream dimension and the living nightmare demon that lives within. Strange instructs Wong to prepare the candles and incense while he gathers the crystals of Agamotto. Meanwhile, Peter wakes up in his bedroom, and he spots MJ standing in the corner, dressed like Elektra. Then she lets loose a sigh as Gwen and Liz Allen hold him in place, and the blade bounces off Peter as Gwen and Liz, who are now in bikinis, hold him down, and MJ, wearing Black Cat's costume, crawls up his lap. She says that she has to kill him before he gets her killed. And then she screams that she'll die because of him, and that everyone he loves will die because of him. Then Peter's in the Daily Bugle as Jonah, Robbie, and Ben place bets on who of Peter's loved ones will die first. Then this robot thing attacks Peter as MJ cheers for it to kill him. Then the building becomes Venom and Doctor Strange appears in giant form, demanding that Nightmare let Peter Parker free. The robot turns into Aunt May, then Green Goblin, then Mary Jane, until its final form is revealed. Doctor Strange begins casting a plethora of spells against the demon until it turns into Stephen's father and blasts the Doctor with nightmarish psionic energies. But Stephen Strange breaks free, enraged that the demon would use his father's image against him, and destroys it. Strange floats over to Peter and plucks an eyebrow off of him. Peter wakes up in a panic as Stephen explains that none of that was real. Then he says that he's been here before. But Stephen had to cast a memory spell on him, so he's probably experiencing a lot of deja vu right now. Peter freaks out even more and leaps out of the window, having forgotten his mask.
You're going to kill me! Peter? Peter? Peter, it's Mary. You're going to kill me! You kill everyone! Kill me now! Just get it done with! But tonight was our fancy date.
Yeah, it kind of goes back into a very depressing state, doesn't it, at the end of this one. As always, let me know what you thought of this story in the comments below. Leave any suggestions for comments down there as well. The next storyline gets a little more serious as well, so you know, it's that roller coaster effect of, you know, Brian Michael Bendis is bringing back some angst and fear and drama back into the story after some fairly lighthearted, dumb stories were taking place. Specifically the Wolverine body swap. I hate Wolverine, I hate Jean, I hate the Ultimate X-Men. They're just so fucking unlikable. And the whole thing about the mutants is just so stupid anyway. It's ridiculous what the actual origin of the mutant gene is in the Ultimate Universe. It's hilarious. One of these days, I'm going to have to cover Ultimate Origins and then eventually Ultimatum, both of which sort of act as bookends to the whole mutant X-gene sort of storyline for the most part. Yeah, that's just those couple issues with the Wolverine thing. Those are so fucking stupid. I hate those so fucking much. But the Human Torch and Johnny one is fantastic. No pun intended. I really like that. I really like the Ultimate Fantastic Four. Johnny is always fun, especially the Ultimate Johnny. Liz Allen is a neat character who, you know, this story kind of foreshadows what happens to her. She becomes Firestar. Is that right? The character from the Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon show. She becomes that character, which is funny that she thinks that she lit Johnny on fire. Maybe her real mutant power was giving herself a mutant power, and that's what she thought she had, so that's what she became. But yeah, that's a fun little story that sort of, it humanizes the world, it humanizes the universe, these characters. It feels more like an actual coming-of-age story. I really enjoy that. I like seeing the teenage kind of experience, this finding your way in life, deciding what you want to be, you know, that sort of thing. It's like I said, it's very humanizing. It feels very real compared to the other two storylines that we covered. The Doctor Strange one is an interesting take. It's a young man who overcomes, well, it could have been this, is what I'm trying to say. Is that I do think the Doctor Strange Jr. and Senior dynamic is interesting, because from what little we see of Doctor Strange Senior, it's pretty much he's Doctor Strange from the main universe until he just up and disappeared. But Doctor Strange Jr., Wong goes to him when he turned like 21 or something and told him all about his father and this and that, and invites him to the Sanctum. And then Strange Senior just kind of Strange Jr. just kind of uses his powers and abilities to make money. He goes on talk shows. He becomes a Hollywood, like, mojo kind of guy. And I really think that Doctor Strange is a huge wasted potential in the Ultimate Universe. Maybe the new Ultimate Universe will have something interesting with the Doctor Strange. I think he's still alive in the new Ultimate Universe. Like I said, I haven't read the new Ultimate stuff. I'm very behind on that. I have all the books pre-ordered that I can so far, so I'm looking forward to it. But I just think it would have been interesting to see this. You know, he starts off as a fairly, like, a young man who's like, oh shit, like, I got all these magical abilities. I could get rich off of this. You know, it's kind of like a reverse Peter Parker in a way. But it would be so cool to have seen this young man who overcomes his sense of greed and, like, wanting to be like a celebrity. He overcomes that and becomes a magician who protects people and protects Earth. Alongside Wong, because Wong really, this is another sort of MCU is inspired by. Wong in this is pretty much carrying Doctor Strange for the most part. But I think that would have been a neat idea. That would have been cool. And then you could have, reinvented different characters. You could have invented brand new characters, because, like I said, Doctor Strange Sr. is pretty much the original Doctor Strange. He seemingly had all of that cast of characters, probably Baron Mordo, the Ancient One, Dormammu, etc. So, yeah, that's how I feel about that. And we also get some interesting stuff with Peter and MJ's relationship. The most heart-wrenching thing being when Liz Allen calls her Mary Jane Watson Parker. That is just so depressing in hindsight. It kind of makes me tear up a little bit when I see stuff like that, just knowing where this story goes. But hey, it's not about the destination, it's about the road that you take to get there. And that road that we're taking to get there is nearing its completion. There's about 130 issues, and this is taking place around about halfway there, maybe. Because I think this is, like, issues 70-something. I have the omnibus down here. I just got this. This is a brand new Ultimate Spider-Man Omnibus, Volume 3, which collects, what are we at? Yeah, 72 to 111. So, we are just over we're about halfway through the Ultimate Spider-Man series at this point. This is the turning point. I'll say this is entering Act 2 of Ultimate Spider-Man, which seems apt based on the upcoming storylines. This all, like I was saying before, I am headcanoning. I'm going to put this down because it's relatively heavy. I'm headcanoning all this to make sense in a way. And to me, based on where Peter's at this point, based on how much time has passed in these comics that they explicitly say has passed, with panels that say, this much time has passed. This feels like it's about a year and a half after he's become Spider-Man or so. Like, maybe he became Spider-Man during the summer. No, that didn't work because it was on a class field trip. He became Spider-Man early on in his freshman year, I think. He's 14, 15. That would make sense. And now this is nearing the end of his sophomore year. Based on the amount of events that have happened, based on the amount of time that's taken place, they fucking filmed and edited and produced an entire movie since this has started. So I think, personally, I feel to make any sense of this timeline, we are reaching the end of his sophomore year, about a year and a half after he's been Spider-Man. And, yeah, he's going to be becoming a junior pretty soon in high school vernacular. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed. These are always fun videos for me to make. I enjoy making them. I'm glad you guys dig them. Ultimate Spider-Man. It is my favorite Spider-Man series out of all of them. I really enjoy it. I think it's the best that it's ever been. And, yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments below. As always, leave any suggestions, blah, blah, blah. Follow me on Instagram at NotBlakeWild. Check out my Etsy and Patreon as well. And I will see you next time for some, I honestly can't remember what's coming next. Bye.